Namaste, good morning, and welcome to the Global Festival of Oneness, celebrating the life and works of Adi Shankara. We are now on day 15, actually, about halfway through the festival that has been going so wonderfully with speakers from all over the world sharing their inspiring thoughts and message of Adi Shankara ji. Today we have the pleasure of hosting once again Professor Makarand Paranjape and Gayatri Iyer. And in this festival, we have been having two sessions every day, one at 6 o'clock IST, and then one at 6:30 p.m. IST, which is the current session you are at. So please continue to join our morning and evening sessions and invite your family and friends to make this festival of oneness and this eternal flow of Advaita, continuously flow and impact and inspire many people around the world. Our first topic today is a dialogue on Adi Shankara, part 2, because some of you may have heard them last week. So a brief overview and introduction to Professor Paranjape. He's currently the director, Indian Institute of Advanced Studies at Shimla. He was educated at Bishop Cotton's Boys School, Bengaluru, St. Stephen's College, Delhi, and the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, where he got his master's and PhD in English. Sir, my daughter is graduating from the same university in 2 days, Urbana-Champaign. So it's interesting.
That's wonderful.
Great school.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
He has been a professor of English at Jawaharlal Nehru University for over 20 of his 39 years as university teacher. He is the author of some 20 and editor of over 24 books, in addition to hundreds of academic papers and popular articles. His latest books include Swami Vivekananda, Hinduism and India's Road to Modernity, New Perspectives in Indian Science and Civilization, Debating the Post-Condition in India, and the Death and Afterlife of Mahatma Gandhi. Professor Makarand Paranjape is currently a columnist in Open Magazine, Mail Today, and The Print. So very glad to have you, sir. Welcome to our festival. And joining him in a conversation is Gayatri Iyer ji. She's the curator for Indica Pictures and a contributing writer for Indic Today and Center for Soft Power, which are all activities of the Advaita Academy and the Indic Academy family. As a budding yoga teacher in the tradition of Sri Krishnamacharya ji, her interests lie in understanding what does it mean to be on the path of yoga. You could give a talk on this at some point in the future. Very interesting. So thank you both for coming again, for making the time to make this festival so wonderful. So please begin your presentation and we'll take questions and answers at the end. Please proceed.
Ravi Shankar ji, I just wanted to add a footnote about Gayatri ji. She's also my better half. So this is truly a conversation in oneness. And, or I shall put it in a slightly different way. It's a conversation in non-duality, because oneness and non-duality are slightly different. But the point is, we are truly an Indic couple. That's what I wanted to say. But over to you, Gayatri. Over to you, Gayatri.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much, Ravi Shankar ji, for this very nice introduction. And we are glad to be back for part 2. In fact, the part 1 echoes are still in our heads. And so we would like to take off from where we left. And I think Professor Makarand left us with something very profound and thought-provoking. I'm sure a lot of us haven't found the answers to it, is that we are all Shankaras. And the biggest message that Shankara has for all of us is to know ourselves, to know the world. And in knowing both is to serve and save the world. So since we've brought this message in contemporary times, I also want you to link this message to what the modern day Vedantins, like Sri Aurobindo, Sri Ramana Maharishi, Swami Dayananda Saraswati, etc., have talked about this whole topic, and also how their work is linked to Shankara's work. So, and I know you already mentioned some of them last time. So maybe you can just elaborate a little more.
Exactly. We remember last time we started with President Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan, whose photo is behind me, who's the founder of this institute. I also said that there is Shankara in all of us, because all of us and the way we practice Hinduism have been affected in one way or another by Shankara. But today, I want to talk a little bit more about some of the great Advaitans of contemporary times. Last time I already mentioned Ramana Maharishi, but I want to start today with talking about Raja Rao. We've just got a wonderful book of his called The Meaning of India. It's just come out with Penguin, and I had a small role in its republication. Now, the reason I'm bringing Raja Rao is, as I said at the beginning, oneness is a lovely word in English language. And, the actual word that we use in Sanskrit or in Indian languages is Advaita. Why do we say that? Why do we not say monism, as some people erroneously call this philosophy? It's because our normal experience of life is duality. So non-duality, when we say non-duality, it is an acceptance that at a vyavaharik level or at the ordinary practical level, we experience duality. And that's why I wanted to start with Raja Rao. This is what he says in Meaning of India. He says, there can be no world without duality, yet there can be no peace in duality. Thus, transcendence is man's only need. In transcendence, there is neither man nor woman, day nor night. Truth, therefore, has been defined by the sages as non-dual. Now, this is a very profound comment because Raja Rao dealt with the tremendous sufferings of 20th century West, and I would say the rest of the world in his writings. And he saw the depredations and the devastations of the two wars, the Holocaust, and any number of tragedies which afflicted humanity. And what did he say? What did he say? He said, there are indeed no horizontal solutions. The human has no answer, ever. Logic, breaking against reality, breaks itself. So why is Advaita? Why is Vedanta? Why is non-duality important? It is important because at the human level, we have no answer to the sufferings of the human condition. And what is it that Raja Rao says at the end? He says, when the ego is dissolved, who are you? There is no one there. Yes, the I is there. The ego's death is the revelation of the I. This I is not the I that you and I talk about as the Dehatma Buddhi. This I is the consciousness, that is, as the Vedantins say, Ekam Evam Advityam. That is, there's none other. That is the non-dual state. And at the end of the book, Raja Rao says, who knows or what knows the knower? In other words, here's a glass or rather a mug of coffee. And you can say, I am the knower of the mug of coffee. That is the object, I am the subject. Now, Vedanta asks, who is the knower of the knower? Who knows the knower? And so the answer is, this is what Raja Rao says at the end of The Meaning of India. Who knows or what knows the knower? What then, sir, is knowledge? The answer is simple. Knowledge, jnana, itself the I. Oh, and that, Maitri, is the meaning of India. So that's
how beautiful.
That's how the book ends. So what Raja Rao is saying is this is India's unique gift to the world, the self-knowledge which abolishes suffering. Now, the reason I brought out Raja Rao as one of the exemplars of modern Advaita is also because, as you rightly said, last time we quoted, or rather I quoted myself when I said, what is Shankara's message to the modern world? Know thyself, know the world, and knowing both, serve and save the world. What does that mean? it really means one thing, which is absolutely clear. In modern times, the thrust of Advaita, the thrust of Vedanta, was not to deny the world, not Mayavad, as some people would call Shankara's doctrine, though that's not quite right, as we said last time. It was a very engaged Vedanta, a this worldly Vedanta. And perhaps the greatest propagator, proponent, and popularizer of Vedanta in our time was none other than Swami Vivekananda, on whom I've just written a book. Now, what did Swamiji say? Swamiji said we need a practical Vedanta. He gave 4 lectures in London on this topic, and there he proved that Vedanta of the rishis was extremely practical. It was very, within quotes, this worldly. It was very engaged. And this is what I tried to prove last time. When we talk about Shankara, Shankara was a great karma yogi. He was not just a jnani who sat in one place. He toured the country. He established mutts. He integrated and reorganized Hinduism, right? And nobody who's not practical, who thinks the world is an illusion, would do that. If the world is an illusion, why should you act in the world, right? So what I'm trying to say is that of the Prasthana Trayi that we mentioned last time, that Shankara said was the foundational texts of Hinduism, that is the Upanishads, the Brahma Sutra on which he wrote a Bhashya, and the Bhagavad Gita. The text in modern times which appealed most to people was the Bhagavad Gita. And, you know, from Bankim, Chandra Chatterjee, then Tilak, right up to Gandhi, Sri Aurobindo, Vinoba, you know, and many, many others. Everybody wrote commentaries on the Gita. Why? Because they wanted to turn the Gita from a text just of bhakti to a text of karma, because they wanted India to reawaken. So the reawakening of India was a task that Vedantins also performed, because they said that to be a true Advaitin was to live in the world. Going back to, you know, Swami Vivekananda, what did he do? He wanted to make Vedanta, which he learned in a sense from Shankara, and he changed Shankara's Vedanta, as we'll see in the next question on caste and so forth, into a universal religion. And what did he do? He integrated all the aspects of Hinduism and called it Vedanta. That means it included the Agamas and the Nigamas, that is the, you know, the Vedas and the Tantras, and, you know, not just the abstract and abstruse philosophies. He also wrote the first modern commentary on Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, right? And he also allowed idol worship. You know, in fact, Sri Ramakrishna himself was worshipped in most of the Ramakrishna missions. And what was the mission statement of the Ramakrishna mission, which he gave? He said very beautifully, he said, Atmano mokshartham jagat hitaya cha. And this is a statement from the Rig Veda, which is very profound, that what are we trying to do? We want our own moksha, we want our own liberation, but we want to uplift the world also. So what I'm trying to say is the best, perhaps, way of describing the Vedanta of Swami Vivekananda is not to call it Neo-Vedanta, as we said last time is a wrong way of putting it, not such a nice way, but integral Vedanta. So we've talked about Raja Rao, who's the latest. We've talked about Swami Vivekananda. I'll also mention, you know, a very interesting modern contemporary philosopher who was the grandson of Mahatma Gandhi. His name was Ramchandra Gandhi, and he wrote a wonderful book called I Am Thou, which is like an English translation of Tattvamasi. And he reinterpreted, you know, Hinduism in the light of Advaita Vedanta. He was a great disciple of, you know, Ramana. And he said that Ramana had cured him of madness in a way. He started off as a philosopher of language, as an analytical philosopher, and then he used Advaita Vedanta in a very, you might say, politically engaged way. For example, he wrote a beautiful novel called Munia's Light, where the central character was a girl called Ananya, also called Munya, her pet name. But the basic thing is the book is a plea against female feticide, the abortion of girl children, because he said it is women who will save us, in that book. So what I'm trying to give you is an example of engaged Vedanta. One of the best examples is possibly Mahatma Gandhi. Now, I want to tell you a secret because very, very few people know that Gandhiji was initiated by Periyaswamy, that is the great, Jagat Guru Shankaracharya of the Kanchi Kamakoti Peetham into sannyasa. He's taken sannyasa diksha. And I read it. I've been trying to find the reference. I haven't found it. And then somebody asked Gandhiji that, why are you not wearing gerua? So he said, no, that will, actually mislead people. So can you imagine that Gandhiji also took sannyasa diksha from one of the Dashanamis and none other than the Shankaracharya of Kanchi Kamakoti Peetham himself. So what I'm trying to say is, and can you think of a more engaged political, liberator of modern India than Gandhiji? We may not agree with some of the things he was doing, but the fact is he gave his life, for the upliftment, not only of India, but also of Hindu society. He was proudly Sanatani, as he always said. And you know what his foundational text was? Again, the Bhagavad Gita. But he also said something very interesting. He said, if all the texts of Hinduism were lost and only the first verse of the Ishavasya Upanishad remained, then all of Hinduism could be revived or could survive in that one verse. Ishavasyam idam sarvam yad kinchit jagatyam jagat tena tyaktena bhunjitha. Ma kasyasmin, ma gridam kasyasmin dhanam. Something like that. So the point what he was trying to say is Ishavasyam idam sarvam. The whole universe is pervaded by that one spirit. You can call it, Isha, the Lord, the Master, or you can call it Brahman. But you and I are not separate. This table, you, me, this computer, this mug of coffee, all of this is imbued by that one spirit. So that is what non-duality really is. We seem to be separate, but actually we are not separate. And the whole universe, actually everything, the known and the unknown worlds are inhabited by that same spirit. And of course, the Upanishad is also teaching you how to live in the world. Tena tyaktena bhunjitha, that is, you enjoy it by renouncing it, by saying that this is not mine, this belongs to the Lord. And this is the message of the Gita, and let me not envy anybody else's wealth, Ma gridam kasyasme mindhanam. Why should I envy what is someone else's when everything belongs to me? So what I'm trying to say is that the modern Vedantins were practical Vedantins, engaged Vedantins. They wanted to use Advaita in the world. They were not, within quotes, Mayavadins. And I don't believe Shankara was too. And as a footnote to this, I must mention two other figures who are very important. Dayanand Saraswati and Sri Aurobindo. In fact, they go contra Shankara. Okay, Dayanand Saraswati, as his name suggests, was a monk in the Dashanami order. But he said, go back to the Vedas. Whereas Shankara had said there is Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda, and this Jnana Kanda was the Prasthana Trayi, and moksha could only come from that. But Dayanand Saraswati said, go back to the Vedas because the Vedas are complete. They have everything in them. But what Sri Aurobindo does, which is, I think, really profound, is he says, not back to the Vedas, but forward from the Vedas. What does that mean? We don't have time for it. We need another conversation on it. But for him, a Vedic mantra was the composite of action, wisdom, as well as vibration. So, and that is why what Sri Aurobindo was an integral yogi. So he said a human being consists of, many layers of consciousness. There's the physical, then there's the vital, there's the mental, there's the psychic and spiritual. And the Vedic mantra, if you understand it, engages all these dimensions and takes you towards the supermind, the supramental. That Hiranyagarbha, the golden womb, there's a veil that separates us from our true identity. And the Vedas can open that door to the golden chamber. And then we will be in full knowledge and possession of all our powers. So I believe, as I was saying last time, that all these great experiments in Vedanta and Advaita can be traced back, or certainly are linked to Shankara and to the great Guru Parampara, which I quoted as a kind of mantra last time, a Mangala mantra, that Sadashiva Prarambham, Shankaracharya Madhyamam, Yogi Ram Sarat Kumaram, Paryantam, Vande Guru Parampara. There is oneness there, as it were, non-duality.
Great. I think, one can have a separate conversation on perhaps each of the modern Vedantins. But I'd now like to divert this conversation to some other questions that were pending from last time, and something that is very important. We talked about Hinduism, especially when the word Hindu comes as caste. And Shankara has been accused of, perpetrating that whole caste system, Varna ashram system. So, for everybody's benefit, please elaborate and clarify what needs to be clarified.
Well, I'll tell you that all societies, human societies, have some form of stratification or the other, okay? And surely at Shankara's time, there was stratification. And in modern times, we believe we are all equal. And in a way, there is a kind of equality. For example, you may be the richest person in the room, but if you make an abusive, a sexist or racist or casteist slur, it is not going to be accepted. But does it mean that in the modern world, there's no inequality? When you're traveling by flight, just try to use the loo, the restroom in the business class or first class. There's a curtain. They'll tell you, go back to your part of the plane. So what I want to say is that obviously at the level of Atman, there cannot be hierarchy. And Shankara knew it very well. But here's a wonderful story about Shankara. When he was in Banaras, the story goes in Varanasi, he had just had a bath in the Ganga, and he came across what was called, or what was considered, one of the lowest of the low jatis, a Chandala. And this person was of fierce demeanor and had, 4 barking dogs in front of him. And Shankara, apparently, this is apocryphal, this is the legend, says, please maintain distance, because, he had had a bath, and the touch or coming too close would be considered polluting. And the Chandala asks Shankara, as the legend goes, who is to maintain distance from whom? Pray, tell me, O sannyasi. And the moment he heard that, Shankara felt that he was in the presence of an enlightened being. So the story goes that Shankara fell at the feet of the Chandala for being reminded of the lesson of oneness or non-duality. And the story is that the so-called Chandala was none other than Kashi Vishwanath, Lord Shankara himself, who had given Shankaracharya his darshan. And you might ask, who were those 4 barking dogs? The 4 barking dogs were the 4 Vedas, and they were barking or shouting the message of non-duality. Now, look at the tradition of the Shankaracharyas today. If you go to most of the Shankar mats, it is true that most people who go there are Brahmins, and so the impression has gone around. But let's put the shoe on the other foot, so to speak. Let's talk a little bit about or rather anti-Brahmanism, because in my view, anti-Brahmanism is also, I'm not a conspiracy theory hunter, but is also a terrible kind of practice of discrimination and violence, which was initiated, if I may put it, by our colonial masters, not just the British, who marked their power in Bengal by hanging Nanda Kumar. Raja Nanda Kumar was a Brahmin who was tried and sentenced for forgery, and he was hung. That Brahman Hatya, you know, in the late 18th century created such a disturbance in British Calcutta at that time that the Hindu section left the city, it is told, for several weeks to avoid the pollution. But what were the British trying to do? The British were trying to say, we don't care about the Brahmins, which means the learned people of India. It's a way to destroy a civilization. You destroy the intellectuals, you destroy, the fighters, the warriors. It's not related necessarily to caste, but it's related to your occupation. What did the Mughals do? What did the Muslim leaders do? Rulers do? They also killed so many Brahmins. They killed, it is reported by Muslim historians themselves, in text after text, they killed Buddhist monks also. When Nalanda was destroyed, so many monks were killed. Now, by killing the intellectuals, you're destroying a civilization. In fact, Guru Tegh Bahadur gave his life to protect the Brahmins. Now, apparently, because Aurangzeb had piled up the Agnopavits, and tufts of Brahmins, that's the story, the legend, if you want to call it that. And he said this should stop. But look at how anti-Brahmanism in our times has worked because of the Dravidian movement of Periyar and others. You see, the danger here is not just that you got rid of the Brahmins, you pushed them out of Tamil Nadu. Many went into central government services. There's a story about this I'll tell you later in a second. But what you do by destroying or abusing, like Periyar also abused the gods of the Hindus, the deities, he garlanded deities with shoes and chappals, and all this is well known. He destroyed an idol of Ganesha, there was a court case, etc., etc. But, the Dravidian movement was very anti-Hindu, anti-Brahmin. But the point is, what it does is it paves the way for proselytizing. It paves the way for predatory conversion. So all of Hindu society suffers. It's not just the Brahmins, okay? So we have to see it in a broader light. But see what happened in Tamil Nadu. Something happened in Maharashtra, which was a bit similar. There was an anti-Brahmin backlash after Gandhi's murder by a Brahmin, Nathuram Godse. And a lot of Brahmins were killed. Their businesses were destroyed. They were boycotted, which was a terrible thing until Bal Thackeray of the Shiva Sena, who didn't care about political correctness, brought in Manohar Joshi as a Brahmin chief minister. You would never have dreamt that Maharashtra could have had a Brahmin chief minister. And there are people who say that Brahmins are useless and they are parasites. But that's not true. They were great fighters. The Mohyals are Punjabi Brahmin fighters, who fought all the way till Arabia and Iraq. The Peshwas were Brahmins. So Brahmins have been agriculturalists, they've been traders, they've been fighters, they've been, they've done all kinds of things. Now, look at the third purge in our own times of the Kashmiris from the valley. They were all Pandits, they were all Brahmins, and they were sent out of the valley. There was a genocide, as we know. Now, this anti-Brahmanism, I think, is a terrible thing too. And let me tell you that when you look at communities like the Kashmiri Pandits, you will see they have no caste. All Kashmiri Pandits, all the Kashmiri Hindus in the valley are only Brahmins. In Jammu, you have other communities. Remember in Sindh, Raja Dahir, who died at the hands of Muhammad bin Qasim a few years after the death of the Prophet. In Sindh, we are talking about 1740s, 50s, around that time, a little later maybe. Not 17, 700, 600, 680, 90, around that time, in the current era. Raja Dahir was a Brahmin. So what I'm trying to say, Sindhis don't have castes. So the point I'm trying to make is, as Dayanand Saraswati, who was a great anti-caste campaigner, said that originally Hindus had no caste. Everybody was one caste. And there are still communities of Hindus who are not stratified. And then stratification happens according to profession. So look at us today. When I clean my toilet, who am I? You want me to say I'm a Shudra, I'll happily say I'm a Shudra. I'm trying to balance my accounts. Who am I? I'm a Vaishya, or I'm trying to invest in the market. Yeah, I'm a Vaishya. What's wrong with that? I'm teaching students. What am I? I'm a Brahmin. Fine. And I'm fighting for dharma. I'm fighting for my rights. Let's say I'm a Kshatriya. So what I'm trying to say, we are all these communities. We are all together. And the old idea of Varnashram Dharma, I'm totally against it. And obviously, anybody who teaches should be considered like a Brahmin. Anybody who fights, regardless of your hereditary. So it's not by janmana, it is by your gunas, as the Gita says. Now, the final point I want to make on this, which is really important. Look at Swami Vivekananda. He came from the Kayastha community. And of course, he was in the Dashanami tradition, as I explained. And what did he do? He asked one of the people whom he was in contact with, saying, where is the evidence for adhikaravad in our scriptures? In other words, only Brahmins should learn the Vedas. And he found none. And he said, let's get rid of adhikaravad. In other words, by birth. Anybody who is worthy of receiving the highest knowledge should strive for it, regardless of caste and community. So what I'm trying to say is that in the name of equality, political correctness, etc., the pendulum has swung to the other side, and we have become, I think, practitioners of reverse racism of sorts. So, calling all Shankarites, whatever you want to call them, some bad word, I don't subscribe to that.
I think you've put it really well, and I think this message needs to go out far and wide on what was the caste system originally, and then how the British, of course, used it for their advantage. And there's so many layers to it. It's not a very simple thing, it's very complex. But I'll again now move to the third part of the talk, and I think that's the final part. That's, Shankara was also linked with Tantra, Tantra practices. And there was a question last time also, which we couldn't get to. So I'd like you to elaborate on that as well.
Well, so this is one of those interesting, possibly controversial aspects of our discussion. And, let me put it to you in this way. We have to understand what is Tantra. And basically, there are different Tantras, left-handed, right-handed, etc. But what Tantra tries to do is to use, the normal sensory and other pleasures and joys and facts of the human condition for transformation. So when I talked about Raja Rao, I said that Raja Rao, like a normal or traditional Shankarite, is for transcendence. But Sri Aurobindo is for transformation. So anybody who wants to transform their energies, including the erotic, the sexual energy, is a kind of tantric. And the thing that the tantras are, most of the tantras are Shaktic tantras, that is, we worship the mother, right? And if you go to Kanchi Kamakoti Peetam, it is Kamakshi who is worshipped. And the whole of the city is seen like a yantra. And the belief is that Shankaracharya passed away, he died there. And it's the golden city. In other words, what is happening is that through Tantra, as it were, and what is Tantra? Tantra means Tantra, Yantra, Mantra, all together is the mode of transformation. That's what it is. So I said last time that what Shankara does is he combines and brings together all the different aspects of Hinduism. So the Agamas and the Nigamas, right? So the Upanishads and the Tantras, right? The worship of deities and yoga. Yoga is, after all, not just yoga karmasu kaushalam, as in the Gita, but yoga as in Raja Yoga of Patanjali, of transformation, right? He's written a commentary on that, though he didn't like that text that much. But he brings in all the different dimensions of Hinduism: bhakti, jnana, karma, tantra, mantra, yantra. So that is what makes Shankara so great, so unique. And, even the doctrine of spandana, which he takes from, his guru Gaudapada, and which is then developed, later in Kashmir Shaivism, you know, in Spandakarika and wonderful texts like that. We've lost that link, and that's another conversation. But what I wanted to say is basically, when you take any great tradition, it will have two sides, right? It will have the left-handed and the right-handed side, so to speak. Now, take the tradition of Christianity. If you've read the Da Vinci Code, you know that there's a story that Christ didn't die on the cross, and nor was he resurrected as the belief is on the third day after his crucifixion, what we call Easter Sunday, after Good Friday when he was crucified. But he didn't die on the cross. When they opened the tomb, Christ came out again. And because he was a wanted man, he left. And whom did he leave with? He left with Mary Magdalene, who was a so-called fallen woman whom he had uplifted. And they had children. And there's a lineage, a householder lineage of Jesus. And they say actually he came to Kashmir. That's a different matter. So what I'm trying to say is each tradition has a celibate lineage and a householder lineage. In our own times, it's true of, the great Sri Ramakrishna. So there's a lineage of the monks and the great Swamijis of the Ramakrishna mission and order. But there's a wonderful book called The Householder Disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. And they were great people. They had children, they were normal people, and they did so much for dharma, and many were enlightened too. So similarly, with Shankara, you can think of two traditions. One tradition where he established these mutts, and, the four mutts established by his, four great disciples, of which now I want to talk about one called Sureshwaracharya, who is supposed to have established the Sringeri Sharada Peetham, okay? But the legend is, who was Sureshwaracharya? Sureshwaracharya's Purvashram name was Mandana Mishra. And the legend is, Shankara had this great debate with Mandana Mishra. It was the most famous debate of its times. And it was a debate that was on the banks of the Narmada. People still talk about the temple, the site where the debate took place, and the debate was on what constitutes, avidya, and what constitutes, liberation. And the story is, and this debate was supposed to have taken place in what we call Mandaleshwar, where there's the Gupteshwar Mahadev temple today in Narmada. I've been there. So the story is, it's a beautiful story. It's also recounted in the book by my friend Pavan Verma. It's a nice readable book on Shankaracharya. It's not as referential as some of us might have wanted it to be, but he balances it out very well. Anyhow, so when he was going to debate Mandana Mishra, he asked somebody, where is his house? So somebody said, when you find a home where the parrots speak and debate in Sanskrit and chant Sanskrit mantras, you will know that that is the home of Mandana Mishra, because the parrots copy what human beings say. Anyhow, so he reaches this house of Mandana Mishra, and there's this great debate, okay? And who is the judge of the debate? The judge of the debate is a very wise lady, the wife of Mandana Mishra herself, Ubhaya Bharati, okay? And she says that I will put this garland on whoever wins the debate. And the debate goes on for about 17 days, I think the legend says. And at the end of it, there's a very crucial episode, as the legend goes. The episode goes as follows, that Shankara is challenged upon, a facet of life he doesn't know anything about, which is basically erotic or sexual pleasure. And he says, how can you say that this is not an upaya? Why is it, an obstacle or whatever? The debate goes like that. And he says, you're going to lose because you have no knowledge of this. So what Shankara does is he says, give me a little bit of time. And so the story goes, he retreats into a cave and he finds out that a king has just passed away. So he does parakaya pravesha, that is, he enters the body of the king, and as the king goes back alive to the harem and stays there for several days and learns whatever there is to learn about sexuality. And the story goes that he likes it so much he doesn't want to come back. So his disciples are upset and his body is lying like a dead body. And they start chanting the Nirvana Ashtakam to him, saying,
I think we are out of time. And
Yes.
So we'd like to end. We are very sorry that we couldn't take any questions, but it was just so captivating and we just wanted it to go on. So apologies for not taking questions, but I hope it was a very interesting conversation and some amazing facts and secrets were let out. So thank you so much for your time and your patience.
Yes, thank you, Professor Makarand, Paranjape ji and Gayatri ji. That was truly a captivating conversation. Lots of interesting ideas that can take a whole lifetime for sort of discussion, because it's again, we have lost a lot of this. But you bring up a very interesting point of using the word of practical Vedanta, engaged Vedanta. And here in Silicon Valley in America, I'm hearing the new word, everyday entrepreneur, everyday leader. So it's almost like we are all practitioners of everyday Vedanta. That means we can have our normal lives, like in household lives, and yet follow the principles of Adi Shankara and what Advaita has given us. So thank you so much for spending your valuable time with us. And this conversation can go on for a longer time, but we will look for other opportunities to have more detailed conversation about some of the ideas that Professor Paranjape